So we're going to get right to it because this is a lot to cover and I want to give you guys a lot of value in a very short period of time. Obviously, this whole thing is about sleep. I'm putting the sleep in Sleeping Giants. And the main reason I'm doing this is because I'm working with clients and I have with hundreds of clients throughout the past years. I was realizing that a lot of people weren't getting results because their sleep was just shot and terrible. So this whole thing is dedicated to try to adjust some of those issues. Obviously, if you have severe, sleep apnea or something like that, this might not necessarily be for you, but some of the aspects of this call will definitely help you. So, the hidden key to your health and wellness goals might be under your own eyelids. Remember, quality sleep is a luxury. It's not a necessity. And as you'll see throughout this call, it's all really about a balanced approach, and I'll cover the care principles of holistic approach, but it's always best to attack the lowest hanging fruit. Uh, Honestly, even if you don't change your diet or your workout, if you fix your sleep, you will see progress. You will lose weight and you will get better results. So keep that in mind. So DEXA scan wake up call. And this is part of the reason why I did this. As you can see on the left, that kind of handsome individual getting scanned underneath that machine, um, which was about a couple of years ago. And at that point, I think I was near single digit body fat. But the owner of the DEXA place became a friend of mine, and he basically, explained. At that time, I was kind of confused. I was like, okay, well, what's going on with my results? They weren't the same as they were last time. And basically, I wanted to hold on real quick. Angela says, got it. Okay, cool. So basically, I wanted to see why my results weren't exactly what I expect them to be. And he pulled up his own personal scans. He owns this device. And so, and by the way, DEXA scans are one of the best body fat percentage devices on the planet, if not the best. They're considered the gold standard. And they're very, very ruthless. So you can see, like at this point, I was probably about I had visible abs, I had striations, I had veins popping out of everywhere. And, by most people's standards, they would guess I was something like 5 to 6% body fat. Well, according to DEXA, I was at like 9.8%. So I thought that was crazy. So it's a very thorough scan. And he brought up his personal charts and he showed me, he's like, check this out. And I don't have the exact graph, but there's a representation of it on the right side. And as I was looking at his graph, he showed me there was a point where body fat percentage started to go up and muscle mass started to go down. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. And he said, I didn't change a thing. All of a sudden, I just started seeing this on my DEXA scans. And then at one point, months down the road, there was a point where that reversed. So his muscle mass started to go up and his body fat started to drop. And I asked him what happened. He's like, again, I didn't change a thing. The only thing that changed during that whole period was basically that he got more sleep. It turned out for him, he was in shape individual in his mid 30s. He ended up having a mechanical issue with his jaw that caused some kind of sleep apnea. So the fix for him was real easy. He got this like plastic piece that was sold at the store for like $20. He wore that every night. That fixed his issues, and that alone was enough to drive the changes in his weight loss. So, you don't snooze, you don't lose. According to two different studies, this is pretty significant. So they did a study where they took a whole bunch of people and they gave one 8.5 hours and they gave the other something like 5 or 6. And in those 2 weeks, the people that slept 8.5 hours compared to the ones that only slept 5 or 6 lost 55%. Well, actually, the people that didn't sleep lost 55% less fat. And that is an incredible difference and enough to frustrate anybody. And by the way, down below you'll see the actual studies you guys can use to look up. I'll give a copy of the presentation to this if you all want it. And then at the end of the study, there will be a full link of all the references that I got from this. I took most of these studies from straight from the source from the scientific literature, and I also got a lot of information from Andrew Huberman and Matthew Walker, Matthew Walker actually wrote the book on sleep. So just wanted to give you guys a heads up on that. But again, I wanted to stress how important this is. So again, one of the main reasons why sleep is so powerful is your hormones kind of go haywire if you're not sleeping well. So you have two important hormones in your system, at least when it relates to hunger and fat loss, ghrelin and leptin. So when you're not sleeping properly, ghrelin is going to go way up. You're going to want to eat more. You get cravings, especially for sweets and salty stuff. And your leptin, which is the hormone that satiates you, basically won't operate as it should, and you won't feel full, right? So, and to further complicate things, your metabolism will slow down and you're going to burn fewer calories throughout the day, which can obviously lead to weight gain. It also is the time when you're sleeping that your muscles are basically repairing themselves. And if you're not sleeping, that process gets hindered. It's going to leave you feeling weak. It's going to affect your gym performance. And in some cases, it will lead to muscle loss. And if you remember anything that I've ever spoke about as far as how muscle is important to your body and burning calories, that is not a good thing. The other thing, sleep is basically the regulator of our immunity. The less you sleep, the more likely you are to get sick and can also cause long-term diseases and other illnesses. And if you're sick, you can't train well. And if you're sick, you usually don't want to eat the things you should be eating. And lastly, all the effects that it has on your mind. I mean, lack of sleep increases your memory, increases your cognitive abilities, your concentration. It makes everything kind of haywire. Obviously, you all know that. And the interesting thing is the same things that mess with your sleep are the same things that mess with your ability to lose weight. So I'll get into that more here in a second. So again, looking over at the holistic principles of all this, and these are general holistic principles for a healthy, whole human being. The acronym is CARE: circulation, assimilation, rest and relaxation, and elimination. So right now we're focusing on the rest and relaxation, which is sleep. But as you'll see throughout the presentation, everything is kind of a fine, balanced machine. And if one is not taken care of, it'll affect the others. So for sleep specifically, we're going to be looking at different tips, tools, and tricks that will assist with you being able to fall asleep faster, stay asleep, and get better quality sleep. But the majority of all can kind of be put into different categories. And that's going to be light, habits, and your environment. Okay. And light, there might not be as many tips or things that I go over that cover light specifically, but it seems to be one of the most heavily weighted ones as far as what happens to your overall metabolism and regulation of your sleep-wake cycle and all that good stuff. So cool. Hopes that makes sense. I know I'm kind of going a little fast, but it's just so much I want to cover and I want to make sure I get it all in there. So let's get started. So here's the first one. So basically getting sunlight, okay? Sunlight equals your pineal gland magic. Getting some sunlight, especially during the morning hours, is crucial. It will help regulate your circadian rhythm and induce your body's natural secretion of the hormone called melatonin. So many of you are probably familiar with this hormone because you probably have it in pill form if you've ever struggled with sleep. And the general rule of thumb is you want to get as much light, especially blue light, during the day and your waking hours, and get as little light as possible, especially blue light, as the sun goes down. Okay, so try to spend some time outdoors, even if it's just for a few minutes. The key is you want to have your pupil look at the sky and or near the sun. Obviously, please don't look at the sun directly. You're going to burn your eyes out. And you also want to make sure you're not wearing sunglasses or you're looking at through a window. Direct exposure to sunlight is usually the best. Okay. Meditate regularly. So again, I'm a huge, huge fan of meditation. I've been meditating for almost 10 years now, and there are so many benefits outside of helping you sleep, including stress reduction, and it doesn't even have to be near bedtime. And this can be super simple. It could be as easy as laying down or sitting down quietly, closing your eyes, and watching your breath. And every time your thoughts wander, you just come back to your breath. That's it. Doesn't have to be anything complicated. You don't have to light incense or you do all these crazy things. It's just very simple. Sit still with your eyes closed and cultivate quiet and stillness. Ton of benefits to meditation. I'm not going to go over all of these, but the research is just crazy. I mean, it was one of those things when I looked it up, it was like I'd be dumb not to do this. So hence why I do it. And the proof is in the pudding. So I want to show you this, guys. This is my sleep tracker that I use. I use this watch. It's just like a Fitbit, nothing fancy. I think it was like 70 bucks on eBay or whatnot. And I track my sleep every day. And something very interesting happened one day that I really made me realize how important sleep was. So on this particular day, you can see, awake, REM, light, and deep. So for me, I get most of my deep sleep. Usually it's in the very first couple hours of the night. This night was a little different. I got them more towards the middle. But if you look at the very end, you can kind of see there's this big blue chunk at the very bottom right near wake time. Okay. So the interesting thing that happened is at that particular point, I was not asleep. I actually woke up. And if you look at the graph, you can see the red up here and indicates me being awake. So I was already awake. I couldn't fall back asleep. So I got up and I meditated for about an hour. And I got into such a deep meditation that it basically mirrored the deep sleep cycles of sleep. And for me personally, I think it's been one of the most restorative practices that I can do, especially when I don't sleep well or don't sleep enough. If I meditate that day, it's a godsend. So wanted just to show you that with you guys. So create a sleep schedule and stick to it. So just like everything else, our body really likes having a rhythm. If you go to bed and wake up at the same time each day, even on the weekends, again, it will help regulate your natural circadian rhythm. The whole thing with light and regulation of your circadian rhythm is, again, the onset of melatonin later out throughout the day, and also getting your cortisol in the morning to spike and dissipate appropriately. A lot of times what happens to people, and one of the reasons people can't sleep at night, is because this cycle is all messed up and their cortisol releases during a different part of the day, sometimes at night when they're trying to go to bed, and this can kind of mess with your sleep, obviously. So create a sleep sanctuary. Again, you want to make your bedroom as peaceful, as relaxing as possible. Decorate it in a way that you find that's really soothing. You don't probably want to use like red all over the place because it kind of induces a lot of other emotions that aren't peaceful and relaxing. According to Sleep Foundation, blue, green, and white probably work the best. And you want to make sure that it's dark, quiet, cool. Highly recommend blackout curtains, earplugs if you can sleep with them. A fan or white noise machines really help, and you want to keep it cool. So anywhere between 60 to 67 degrees Fahrenheit tends to work best. I know for those of you in Hawaii, that's kind of difficult, but an AC will work as well. So the other thing too, and this is such an obvious one, but I had a conversation with a client not too long ago. I don't know if he's on here right now. I won't name him, but he noticed that when he was traveling and he was sleeping in hotels, he slept better. And I was like, well, why do you think that is? He's like, you know what? I think it's because the beds are more comfortable. And I'm like, well, how long have you been sleeping on your bed like that? He's like, for years. And how long have you had this issue? He's like, for years. And I'm like, dude, get a new bed. And he's like, oh yeah, like it didn't hit him that his bed was not something that was good for his particular body type. He was having a lot of aches and pains. He wasn't sleeping well. And I did the math on this real quick. And you spend something like 26 years of your life sleeping. So if you're going to dedicate that much time to an act, you might want to invest in a good quality mattress that are actually going to help you, sleep well, and replace them every 8 to 10 years. Caffeine. Yeah. So I want you to all to be honest and put in the comments how much caffeine do you drink per day? So if you drink coffee, 1, 2, 5. If you're Mike or old Mike, that's probably 10 cups. Just kidding, Mike. We love you. Glad you've reduced that amount. I'm really curious to see. Caffeine's obviously America's favorite drug. And the thing about it is it can stay in your system for up to 12 hours and interfere with your sleep. So let's see real quick. 3 cups a day. Okay, so, and again, caffeine has a lot of positive benefits. I'm not anti-caffeine. It's actually really good for you in many different ways. The trick here is to just regulate the amount that you have, and it's usually a good idea to have a cutoff time. So say that's like noon or 10 o'clock, whatever that is. Some people don't necessarily do well with caffeine. Some people do. Some people can take caffeine right before they go to bed and fall asleep just fine. Some people have a caffeine sensitivity and can't really stomach it at all. And let's see, it does look like there's a good amount of you. Yeah, pre-workout. I won't get into the whole pre-workout thing because I want to make sure I finish this on time. But long story short, avoid caffeine. Alcohol is another big one. You think it's going to help you fall asleep, and usually it does. Be completely honest with you guys, and most of you know my history, but one of the hardest reasons that I struggled to stop drinking was because I could not fall asleep any other way. And it felt worse to be hungover. Sorry, it felt worse for me to not sleep than it did to be hungover. So yeah, for what that's worth, I understand the struggle, but it just ultimately limits your ability to stay asleep deeply, and your REM sleep, which is one of the most restorative parts of that cycle, is going to be altered. So same thing with smoking. I mean, it's 2024. If you're still smoking, you're probably not watching this call. If you are, I'm sorry that you haven't been able to give that up yet. Ray Charles said it was harder for him to quit smoking than it was to quit heroin. That's a different topic, so we're going to keep going. This one's obvious, right? Get regular exercise. The only thing I will say, I know there's some midnight warriors of you out there, but try not to exercise close to bed. A lot of times it has the opposite effect that you want. It energizes you, it boosts you. Again, this is not for everybody, but for the vast majority of people, it is. Pro tip, work out as close as you can to the morning. That's when your cortisol is usually the highest. You're going to do yourself a service if you get it out out of the way first thing in the morning. Typically, people will get busier throughout the day. People will pile their schedules on you throughout the day. So getting it done first thing is usually very beneficial when it comes to consistency, and it'll help regulate your circadian clock. So priming, this is another one of those things. So like winding down the hour before bed is great. So your brain again has associations with locations, with performing certain acts. For example, sometimes even just the scent of coffee in the morning might wake you up a little bit because you know what's about to happen. So it's the same thing before you go to bed. Obviously, avoid blue screens or screens in general. Super, super important. One of the tricks I'd love to give you guys is you can set a reverse alarm on your phone or your watch or whatnot. So basically, that means an hour before you go to bed, that alarm will go off saying, hey, it's probably time for you to start winding down and get to sleep. So creating a bedtime ritual, this is kind of piggybacking on that other one. Doing the same things each night before you go to bed will again help further that priming of, okay, we're about to do this action. And if you do that with a relaxing activity such as reading or listening to music, that is also helpful because it'll help put you in that state of relaxation and ready to go to bed. But with like all things, consistency is really key. So supplements, the thing that everyone is curious about and I always get asked about and everyone wants to know. So just kidding, not yet. But we will talk about them. I promise. It's coming. That's towards the end, and there's a reason that they're towards the end. But we'll keep on going right now. Again, I want to cover all this, and we're doing pretty well on time. Okay, so avoid working in bed. This one's pretty huge. Again, your brain creates associations. During COVID, one of the main reasons people struggled working out at home was because their brains associated home and the locations they were trying to work out, for example, your bedroom or living room, with rest and relaxation. It did not see those locations as this is where I jump up and down, try to get my heart rate maxed out. So there was cognitive dissonance happening there. So the same thing happens with your brain and your bed. And going back to the three principles I was talking about with light and habits, this is one of the biggest things I see with people is they have a lot of negative habits or bad habits associated with the bedroom and the bed itself. So if you're sitting in your bed scrolling Instagram for 30 minutes every night, your brain associates that with getting dopamine hits while you're sitting there in bed before you're trying to relax, right? So that's not a state that's going to be inducive or ideal of you relaxing and sleeping. So eliminate all that behavior, keep it out of your bedroom and use it for sleep and intimacy only. And any devices or things like that, especially the emit light, I would say keep them completely out of your bedroom. I know that's sometimes hard, especially if you're like in college or things like that, but just do the best you can with that. So blue light blockers, I actually got me some of these myself. They've been pretty helpful. And the trick with these is you only wear them at night. Well, it looks like Cyclops there. Don't wear them during the day because, as I mentioned earlier, one of the key principles with light is you want that blue light during the day. But once the sun starts to go down, that's when you pop them on and it will help you again kind of wind down the colors themselves. This wasn't something that I saw in the research, but something experiential is the colors themselves and having everything be cooler is kind of calming in a way. Like all the blue light is a little bit more aggressive, but to the eyeball, seeing everything tinted red and warmer was a little bit more relaxing, at least in my experience. So it might be part of the reason why it helps. So naps. So this is a great one that I get asked a lot about too. And I'm curious what you all think. Should you nap or not? So in the comments, if you're on Facebook or you're on Zoom in the chat, let me know what you think. I want to know if you think that naps are totally fine or no, you shouldn't nap for whatever reason. Because everyone has a different answer and opinion. So I would love to know what you think. So let me see. Okay. It throws off your nighttime routine. Okay. Yeah, that's very common for people. I can't see what's on Facebook, but I'll come back and answer these. So the answer, unfortunately, like most things, is it depends. Okay. Generally, they're okay, but you want to limit them. And obviously, if they disrupt your nighttime sleep, cut them out. If you're gonna nap, try to keep it short. 20 to 30 minutes seems to work best because you avoid sleep inertia. Sleep inertia is just a fancy term for that time period after you wake up after you nap, where you're feeling groggy and disoriented and you can't really concentrate on anything. So in order to avoid that, you want to keep the nap short because 20 to 30 minutes will be right around the range before you enter a deeper sleep cycle. Again, this isn't the case for all people. Some people can nap for a little bit longer and usually not have that sleep inertia. So if that's you, that's fine, but try to keep it under 90 minutes. And it definitely avoids sleeping closer to bedtime and later in the day because that might disrupt your nighttime sleep. So don't lie in bed awake. Again, this is another huge one. This is more to do with the association part. If you're just lying in bed and you can't sleep, this is one of the things I used to do is I would get frustrated and I would toss and turn and I would get aggravated and I would stare at the clock. And by the time that it was time for me to wake up, I felt so stressed out. I felt worse than if I just like didn't sleep at all and would have just gotten up. And what happened over several years probably is I started to associate that feeling with being in bed, right? So again, you get into bed, you're trying to sleep, but because your brain has felt that emotion so often for so long in that location, it automatically wants to go there. So attitude is key with this one. But if you can't fall asleep, say 20 minutes after you're trying, get up and go do something relaxing. Physically leave the room if you can and do something until you're tired and then come back and try again. Obviously, I mentioned this one earlier. Use a sleep tracker, what you can measure, you can manage. It's the same thing when people tell me like, I'm eating 1,000 calories and I can't lose any weight. And I'm like, oh, how do you know you're eating 1,000 calories? Have you tracked it? And they're like, no. Well, it's the same thing. It's like sometimes you might think you're getting enough sleep, but you're really not. Or maybe if you got more sleep, you feel better. Or maybe it's the other way and you think you're sleeping enough, but different areas or ways to look at it. But if you track it, you have some physical data. Heads up, they're not always the most accurate, but having some idea is obviously better than none. And then you can decide, what you need to do to improve or what you're doing is actually making a difference. Because if you're tracking your sleep, you notice you get 6 hours on average, and then you start implementing some of these tips, and all of a sudden that goes up, then you have your answer that, there was an issue or that these things are helping optimize your sleep. So are y'all awake? It's 3. Okay, so yeah, we're doing good on time. Just wanted to take a minute because I'm plowing through these and I know it's a lot of information. So we'll keep going. By the way, again, if you're watching and you have to leave early, message me or comment sleep, and I'll make sure I get you a copy of this presentation. It'll also have the links to several of the tools that I'm going to mention here coming up. But if you're still on, let's get it. So limit PM fluids and avoid diuretics. Waking up during the night is usually a natural and normal phenomenon for most people, especially if they have to use the restroom. And the more that you age, usually this becomes more prevalent. So don't stress out about it if that's you. Just do your best to set yourself up for success and limit the amount of fluids that you're intaking, usually 2 to 3 hours before bed, maybe a little bit more if it's more of a frequent issue. Something I just thought of that I didn't put in the supplements section. If you struggle with this, well, one, talk to a doctor, but two, pumpkin seed extract is a supplement that can help with urinary or bladder issues if you're waking up too frequently and going to the restroom. So yeah. And again, so this one again might be obvious, but maintain a balanced diet. This goes back to the care principle. As you all can obviously see, a lot of these things interact with other parts of our body and what's going on there. So specifically, there's certain foods, almonds, eggs, tart cherries, kiwis, which I didn't mention on here, are known to promote sleep and have really great nutrients that will help balance your gut health. And there is a link between gut health and sleep quality. You might want to eat more fermented foods, sourdough bread, which is something I love and I've been eating a lot lately. Yogurt, kimchi, sauerkraut, apple cider vinegar, things like that will help with your gut health and will improve your chances of falling asleep, staying asleep, and feeling like a champion. Manage stress. So this one is huge and something that happens with a lot of people that I work with. So the interesting thing is if you're really stressed out, again, this is affecting your hormones, right? Cortisol spikes, which by the way, if you don't sleep, cortisol also spikes. Cortisol is one of the hormones that's most responsible for storing fat, specifically in the belly. So you can see how that's an issue, right? So finding ways to manage stress is really, really important. Yoga, going back to meditation, right? Or CBT based stress management, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. But stress is huge. Do your best to reduce that and manage that, especially close to bedtime. One of the other ways to do that is by using relaxation techniques. Not only will this help with stress, it'll help you relax and fall asleep. There's some great deep breathing techniques and progressive muscle relaxation and meditations that can help you. This is actually a link here. Like I said, I'll send you a copy of this and you guys can check out that site, which has all the specific tools on there. Pictured is Wim Hof. Shout out to him, by the way. He has some great breathing exercises that do a whole bunch of other things besides the stress relaxation. I've given his protocols to some of you before. Get rid of distractions. So this was something, again, I touched on before as well, but anything in your room that is not conducive to you sleeping, get it out of there, especially anything that emits light or sound. I know people that have gone as far as they leave their phone like outside of the bedroom. They have like a little desk and it can't come into the bedroom. There's some people that even claim you want to turn off your Wi-Fi or anything that emits any kind of signals. Didn't really find a ton of research on that, but something to consider, especially if you're really sensitive. Yeah, avoid eating 2 to 3 hours before bed. Similarly to limiting your water, you might want to limit your meals. It can disrupt your sleep, especially if they're really heavy and fatty. However, on the flip side, you might not want to go to bed hungry. It can wake you up. So if you do want to eat something light before you go to bed, try something that's high in protein and low in carbs to help you regulate your blood sugar and help you stay asleep and fall asleep. So ditch the socks. Again, if you're not able to keep your room cooler, one of the things you can do is not only get rid of your socks, but you can poke your extremities or basically your, outside of the blanket that you're wearing. It'll help regulate your body temperature. When you're sleeping, your body will naturally drop a few degrees. So when your feet or your body are warm, your blood vessels will constrict and it makes it harder for you to lose heat, which can obviously wake you up. So on the other side, and this is better suited for people who are able to control their temperature or in colder environments, try a weighted blanket. So I have one of these back in my hometown. When I go and visit, I use it and it works really well. I can attest there is something really soothing about having a heavy weight on you when you're trying to sleep. But if it's hot, forget it. It doesn't work. But there are some research or studies that I've come across that show, especially for people with anxiety, it can really improve your overall sleep quality and help release those good hormones like serotonin and oxytocin. Okay, you guys still with me? Give me a thumbs up. You're still there. Hopefully this is helpful for y'all. We're gonna plow right along. We're about halfway done with the hours, so I think we're gonna finish right on time. So what if I wake up? So this is a great question, and this is something that I struggled with and still on occasion do. A few things. So you want to still keep all the principles that we just went over. You want to avoid light, you want to avoid screens, and if you can't fall asleep in 20 minutes or less, you want to get out of bed. And at that point too, it might be the time where if you didn't take supplements to try to fall asleep, you can take them now as well. The other thing you can do is something called NSDR, which stands for non-sleep deep rest. And those are some of the meditation and relaxation techniques that I told you I had linked on the page before. And including with that is some of these are called Yoga Nidra scripts. So these are YouTube videos that you can play that is basically like a guided sleep meditation. And you're not always going to fall asleep with these tools, but it'll put you in a relaxed state. And more than often, you will fall asleep at the end. But if not, you at least get some kind of relaxation from it, which at that point is, the best you can do as far as not sleeping. And again, with this whole thing, attitude is crucial. Worrying about the clock and checking the clock or think, the one that I used to do a lot is counting the hours before you have to get up and trying to figure out how much sleep you're going to get. That's all bad. Try not to think about that. And, something else you can do as well is read something that's inspirational or relaxing. However, you have to be careful because if it's too interesting, it might spike your alertness. So try to pick something kind of moderate or, low energy. So supplements, finally here, told you we'd get here, and they're last for a reason. I'm curious again, tell me in the comments. I really want to know what supplements you all have tried, maybe even what supplements you're taking now, and especially if anything has been particularly effective for you. I would really, really curious because everyone is different, obviously, with supplements and just like with food and training and everything, depending on your body type and everything, it's going to be it's going to affect you differently, right? So person A could take X supplement and be affected very different from person C. So cool. I see you guys on Facebook. Keep on putting in the comments. And again, reminding you, if you drop the word sleep, I will send you a copy of this. So here we go. Well, before I do that, let me just read one more. The Costco brand of melatonin works well, but leaves me groggy. Okay, awesome. Thanks for sharing that one. So here we go. So arguably the most effective one is going to be some form of magnesium, specifically magnesium threonate. However, again, I've experimented with this myself, and magnesium in general is effective, but I find that different kinds work differently and during different times. I take threonate, but I also like the topical kind, which is a spray. I find that that one usually puts me out faster, and if I haven't taken it in a while, will just basically knock me out. And there's a few brands that I like that I will add to this presentation if you guys want to know specific recommendations. The other ones are apigenin, which is the active compound found in chamomile, valerian root, lavender, passion flower, kava, L-theanine, which is one of the active compounds in green tea, and glycine. So with all of these supplements, the rule of thumb is basically you want to start at the lowest dose and then work your way up. The lowest dose is usually what's recommended on the bottle, but not always. And again, they all affect you differently. So there is a method you can kind of try. But before I forget, always consult with your healthcare provider, especially if you're taking other medications, because some of these can overlap with some of what you're taking. So the Huberman stack, which I have been taking recently, about 30, 60 minutes before bed, and his recommended dosages are magnesium threonate, 3 to 400 milligrams, L-theanine, 1 to 400 milligrams, and apigenin 50 milligrams. So taking all three of those together before you go to bed, I can attest for me, it works. At first, it was leaving me a little groggy, but now not so much. And I have seen in my personal sleep tracker, my REM goes way higher. When I've taken the stack, usually I get something like close to an hour worth of REM. When I've taken the stack, I've gotten up to like almost 2 hours at times, which is wild. So be careful because my dreams are usually pretty good, but for people that have nightmares or don't dream as pleasantly, you will have very vivid dreams, at least potentially. So I wanted to throw that out there. The other thing is with these supplements, if you want to be quote unquote scientific about this, you start with one. So maybe start with magnesium, you take it daily for at least 2 to 4 weeks, track to see like, okay, is this working? Is this not? And then after you're done taking it for 2 to 4 weeks, then you just stop taking it. And then you see for another 2 to 4 weeks what happens, right? So one way to tell if it's effective, obviously, is if you track for 2 to 4 weeks, you take the magnesium, maybe you notice on your tracker that your score's gone up, or you just feel more rested, and then you stop taking it, and then your sleep score goes down and you don't feel well, then you have some kind of hard data that basically shows you like, okay, this supplement works or does not work for me personally, right? Once you do that with one, then you can start trying to either change to another supplement or you can try the stack. But I do not recommend you go right for like that Huberman stack without kind of testing the waters. The way that I personally did it, and again, this isn't advice, this is just the way that I did it. I started with the magnesium, tried that for a little while. I tried the theanine for a while. I tried the apigenin for a while. Then I combined the theanine and the apigenin. Then I combined, one with the other. And so finally I just put all three together after experimentation and then realized, okay, this works for me. So melatonin was left for last. And Basically, because there's evidence that it could potentially downregulate your own body's ability to produce it naturally. And as I said earlier, light is so important, and a lot of this has to do with the way that sunlight stimulates your pineal gland and the natural secretion of melatonin. So if you take that too often, it can potentially mess with that. And the only time I would say that it is like super beneficial, and this is again something that's been based off of my experience, is when you're traveling and shifting time zones. In that case, I would say, yeah, that can really help. But the other problem with melatonin, and arguably you could say this about any of these supplements, is there's not an extreme regulation by the FDA on any of these things. So the amount of melatonin that you need is very, very small. And on some of these supplements, they're giving you like 10 to 100 times more than you need. There's actually studies on this. They've tested these supplements out on the market and have found that the amount of actual quality ingredient that is in the supplements are either way less than they claim, or it's like astronomically higher. So just throwing that out there, be careful. Again, most of the brands that I'm showing on here, I trust, but I would even recommend, do your own research. Don't just take my word for it. Be really careful about what you're buying. I wouldn't recommend you go to the corner store and buy any of the cheap brands. I mean, maybe some of those are good, but as far as I can tell, usually you get what you pay for. So just make sure you're, looking that up. Side note, before you start taking any of these things, make sure your vitamin D levels are in range. Most humans, especially in the US, are deficient on two uh, minerals. One is magnesium, one is vitamin D. Obviously, we just talked about how those both affect sleep. So a lot of times you can think that, hey, something's going on, or I have all these issues, and then you get your vitamin D checked and you're super low. You start supplementing with vitamin D, or you spend more time in the sun, and all of a sudden you're sleeping, like a baby. So make sure you get that checked out. If you do not get regular labs, highly, highly recommend you get regular labs at least once a year and get all that checked out. Music. So one of my favorites, obviously, I am biased. I love music. I'm a musician, but it works. Again, there's some YouTube playlists I put on here, and it's really, really cool because the theory behind a lot of these binaural beats is, again, as we sleep, we enter certain frequency ranges. Our brain will change its frequency and go into deeper waves. So what they do with these binaural beats is they play these frequencies to try to mimic the same stages. So it can help kind of trick you into getting into that place of relaxation, fall asleep, stay asleep, and sleep better. And some of the songs, I mean, they're really cool and relaxing. Usually works best with headphones. Prayer. Prayer can be a very helpful way to relax and focus on something outside of yourself, especially if you're having one of those days where you're frustrated and you're, looking at things and stressing out. Again, this is helpful for me personally. Highly recommend it to all of you, and it can help you with your sleep issues. I think I mentioned this one before. Avoid checking your clock. Clock checking has been linked to increased anxiety and difficulty falling back asleep. You can use one of the sleep relaxation methods I mentioned previously. And again, there's a link on here. So if you want this presentation, comment sleep, I'll make sure you get it. This one's really cool. What time is it? So I'm going to skip this one, but long story, I'll actually go through it real quick. If you worry a lot, 2 hours before you go to bed, jot down everything that you're stressed out about. If there's anything you can do about it right then and there, do it. If not, get it out of your head and take care of it tomorrow. Keep it dark. Again, this is one of those obvious ones I mentioned before. Sun goes down, start dimming your lights. And even better, if you can change your lights to be near the floor or on the floor, it'll help because it's not stimulating or replicating the sun that's up in the sky. So you want to avoid anything that's overhead and that's bright, especially during the day. So, and candlelight is great too, by the way. And another way to say this is, and this is probably more important, I should have started with this, avoid any kind of light between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. It will suppress your dopamine and it will inhibit your learning and obviously cause all sorts of other issues that will inhibit your sleep. The worry list, I think I just went through that. Yeah, so this one's good too. Taking a warm shower 1 or 2 hours before you go to bed will help. I spoke earlier about your body dropping in temperature, right? So this is what happens when you take a shower. If you take a warm bath, it will spike your body temperature, but then it'll lower it. So if you do this near bedtime, it'll help put you in that state and will be helpful for you. So again, most of these tips, I promise if you work on implementing them on a regular basis over time, they should help you and you will see some improvements. But if you've tried all of these and tried them for a long enough time, I'm not talking about a week or two, I'm talking about like 3, 6, 9 months, maybe a year, then I highly suggest you get some help, talk to a doctor, look for a CBT therapist, which is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. I have personally done that along with a process called sleep restriction that can really help, and you should be good. These are all the sources of the studies that I mentioned on here. If you have access to the scientific database, you can look up any of these. Some of these have links that will take you directly to the study. And I believe that's pretty much it. So 412, I did pretty well. We have 8 minutes. If you have any questions, now is the time. And as you're all doing that, let me stop my share. So I'm going to look at, I have a few questions people asked beforehand. If any of you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself if you're on the Zoom call, pop in and talk to me, or you can type it in on the chat and I will be happy to answer. And meanwhile, while you're doing that, I'm just making sure I'm checking the Facebook group and answering any questions that might be on here. Okay, so tips for what if I have kids, especially newborns? That's a great one. Um, I'm sorry. I feel bad for you. There's nothing you can do. No, no, I'm just kidding. But seriously, there's only so much you can do. I think the most important thing is you apply the majority of these tips when possible. Obviously, setting expectations is going to be crucial, right? So don't have a newborn thinking you're going to sleep like you used to and get 8 hours. It's going to be obviously broken and you're going to take what you can get. So having that time be quality time is going to be very, very important. Apply all these tools. Teamwork with your partner, I think, is crucial. And nap when your kid naps, right? When your baby's asleep or your kids are napping, that'd be a great time for you to get in that nap. Again, 20, 30 minutes works best. Keep it under 90 if and when possible. What if I live in a noisy environment and usually can't fall asleep or get waken up in the middle of the night? Yeah, this one's tough. So two things, you can try earplugs. I personally used to think I could not sleep with earplugs until I went on a retreat and slept with a bunch of guys who were literally snoring symphonies. It was incredible to hear that. I didn't think that was possible. And I stuck some earplugs in my ears and I managed to do it. So earplugs work. Again, some people can't stand things. I mean, I would wake up with them off, but it definitely helps. But if not, and honestly, one of my favorite things that I do regularly is I have a sleep machine that I carry and take with me. It's just a little sleep generator I got on Amazon. Again, that link will be in the presentation. If not, you can use your phone. There's these white noise generators or your laptop. And the one that I have came with a pamphlet that will show you the frequencies that it emits and what it'll mask, which is great. So if there's like a snorer near you and he usually snores, you look up that list and you can say, okay, cool, I have to put it on this setting because this setting usually masks snoring and you'll only hear the white noise. You won't hear the snoring. And again, I've tested this out, works really well. I travel with it. I do not leave the state without having that on me. Jet lag. How do I get over? Yeah, what are some tips when you're traveling a lot? So again, this is one of those times I mentioned that it could be very helpful to try melatonin. Um, and the other thing with jet lag basically is you want to shift the time that you're going, sorry, you want to start shifting your personal schedule to the time zone that you're going to. So for example, say you're going from the West Coast to the East Coast, there's going to be a 3 hour time difference. That's right, I think. Then each night, as you get closer to your trip, you want to try to adjust when you're going to bed by about an hour until you get closer to that time zone. And again, you want to take melatonin as you're trying to go to bed so that you can kind of help stimulate that regulation, but only take it when you need it, and also adjust your sunlight accordingly. Can I make up my sleep on the weekends? So that's something called sleep debt. If you're not sleeping a lot during the week and you're accumulating sleep debt, then you're trying to get more, Saturday and Sunday. So you can do that and it's okay, but it's not going to make up for chronic deprivation. Um, if you're chronically undersleeping and it's become an issue, then usually the way that debt is recuperated, it's not going to be enough on the weekends to really kind of get that back. So you want to, again, apply these principles, try to make sure that your sleep hygiene is on point as much as possible. And, again, and there is something to be said that though time is important and it's one of the factors that's actually looked at when they're trying to rate your sleep, there is something to be said about getting quality sleep. So say, for example, like I've had times, I'm sure many of you might have had similar experiences where maybe you sleep only 6 hours as compared to 8 hours, but those 6 hours were like really deep and you felt really good. And there's been times where, again, I've gotten like 5 hours of sleep and I've felt way better than I've gotten, say, 8 or 9 hours of sleep because those 5 or 6 hours, I just hit a really deep stages of REM or, a deep delta sleep and was able to feel refreshed. So, again, it's one of those things where with all of this, there's a lot to it. Again, I will happily send this all to y'all one last time if you want this. If you're currently working with me, I will make sure you get this in the group. And there's a second part where I'll send you a questionnaire and I'll help you evaluate what areas you need sleep in. And then we can come up with a plan together, a certain habits that you want to form, and I'll help you with that and keep you accountable to that. For everyone else, you'll get the plan. And if you guys need any help with any of the sleep stuff, or even with obviously the workouts or losing weight, send me a message and I'll see if I can help you out. That being said, I think that's pretty much it. I don't really see any other questions. Let me make sure there's not any on here. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So gave you 2 minutes back. Hopefully that was helpful. I know it was fast. I did record this. There will be a replay. If you're in the Facebook group, if you have any other questions, even if you're watching this later, drop them in the chat and I'll be happy to answer them. And you as well on the Zoom call. And yeah, hope you all have a fantastic rest of your evening. Sleep like a baby, sleep with the angels, stay strong and healthy. Talk to y'all soon.